Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Return to the Realm, a rereader's podcast for the Realm of the Elderling series by Robin Hobb. I'm Kayiu, and I'm here with Alex and Leah, and today we're going to be reading chapters 5 through 9 of Royal Assassin, the second book in the first trilogy. However, as a reminder, just in case you're stumbling on this as your first episode, this is a spoilers all podcast. So we're going to be talking about any and all of the 16 books in the Realm of the Elderling series. So, if you still haven't finished them and don't want to be spoiled, bookmark this and then come back later. If you have or just don't care, cool, we're glad to have you. Um, and I think, yeah, with that, we can just get into where we left off last time, which is actually, we're secretly doing an extra half chapter here with the second half of chapter 4, which is where we get to meet Nighteyes. So,
Yay!
My favorite.
Do
I'm
you
so
want
excited.
Should we start again with like reading a little bit?
sure, do
Yeah,
what you
should
want
we
to do.
like start with the section? The section that
Yeah.
where he meets Nighteyes?
Mhm. You know,
Yeah, I'm into that.
the whole I hate you, all of you. Come closer. I'll kill you. I'll rip your throat out. I will answer you. Like just so I
All
like
the hatred.
yes, definitely made for each other. They're both so over the top.
They really are.
I
And they're
love drama
both like,
queens.
I think I put it in my notes, but they're both like caged, angry, hormonal beasts, basically. Because Fitz kind of feels trapped in his life and the keep and whatever. They're just fueling each other's fires.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, so like this they end up meeting because Fitz just is in a bad mood and kind of just like drifts aimlessly through Buckkeep town. And then at a point he realizes that his bad mood is starting to overlap or be like fueled by uh the bad mood of an animal that he's feeling. And he comes upon like this vendor stall and sees like this really angry little wolf cub, and it's like, you know what? This wolf cub is being mistreated. I'll make him mine. Only because he's being mistreated and not for any other witch related reasons. Um, I love like right here where the seller is like, you want something? And then Fitz out loud, this is not a thought, this is not just like an accidental thing that he was thinking with his Nighteyes. He says, blood. I want your blood. Like, Fitz?
Like that's not creepy.
Yeah. Honestly,
I love
given if I was the dude, I would be scared. I'd be intimidated by that. I'd be like, oh, you know what? Maybe you can
Well, it's also
have it
like
for just
right
like five
before a
coppers.
storm. It's right before a storm, so like not everyone is out. Like everyone's closing up shop, and then this creepy kid comes along and tells you that he wants your blood. Like
this kid that's
that would
like
freak me out.
in a black enough mood that people are actively avoiding him on the street or like walking the other way when they lock eyes with him. Like I think there's a part where this part where he says a man hurried toward me, face shrouded in his hood against the wind. He glanced up and our eyes met. He blanched and turned aside to hurry back the way he had come. Like, you look scary enough to make people blanch on the street.
As a teenager too. He's not even like a full-grown man.
Right.
And I always find it interesting how like this stuff like never factors into his reputation somehow. Like I feel like some of these moments should like or maybe they do they kind of do come back later on when like he gets accused of having the wit. Everyone was like, oh look, you remember when he was angry? But like I feel like in the day-to-day scheme, people are just like, yeah, no, like, remember the time the bastard was like really angry, like terrifyingly so, and like wading through Buckkeep town? You know, we just don't talk about that.
Right.
It's still like really sad to see Nighteyes in this state, given like what a playful person we know that he is slash that he grows into. So to see like this completely like distrustful, violent, like just lashing out at the world version is like it was super jarring when I first because like I remembered like the vibe of it. I didn't remember like the extent or like how like vitriolic it was. So it was really like uh, it really like knocked me on my ass, to be honest. I was like, oh man.
It's so traumatic, especially like in the Fitz and the Fool, there's a part where I think it's in like Fool's Assassin, but it might be in the second one. I can't remember the name. But Fitz like has a dream of like getting smoked out of the den, and like he dreams what happened to Nighteyes and his mother and his like brother and sister. And there's a part where he mentions like, I haven't dreamt that the wolf's dream in a while, like insinuating that Nighteyes had that dream, that nightmare occasionally throughout his life. It's like, it's
That's
just
so
a
sad.
baby. It's so sad.
Yeah, and
I'm
it's
so
like,
glad that I hope the vendor gets killed
Oh, definitely. He
aggressively.
needs it.
Yeah.
yeah, like Nighteyes just always feels like so sad to me because like Fitz does like the like moan about like being so alone or whatever, but Nighteyes is like actually truly alone other than Fitz. Like has no family because doesn't have any friends of his own species. It's just like and like and Nighteyes, you don't see Nighteyes being like, man, I hate this, but like it's because Nighteyes has like has like a good perspective on life, and Fitz just like actively refuses perspective whenever offered.
Well, and Nighteyes lives like right in the moment. He's like,
Mhm.
yeah, I don't have friends right now, but that's not something that he dwells on or thinks about just because he's like, it's not relevant to whatever he's doing in the present moment.
Look, I may not have
Right.
friends, but I have fish, and that's what matters.
Yeah.
I think it's funny that Fitz has to literally. There's a part where he mentions that he's gripping his cloak to keep from like murdering the vendor
I know,
because
that's so intense.
yeah, he's having so much trouble like controlling himself. It's like
I just love how strong their connection is right from the start because it's something that we haven't seen before because when he connects with the dogs, well, when he connected with the Night Eye or when with Nosy, it was more like we just have one brain because we're a puppy. And then when he connects with Smithy, it's like Smithy's just kind of there to keep Fitz alive, but he doesn't really have too many thoughts on his own besides like I want to go out and play, like will you take me to go out and play? But Night Eyes feels like he's already this it seems like both of them now because they're both matured are like their own individual beings first. Like they have their own thoughts and then the way that they connect is such a strong thing because they do kind of merge into one. I think both of them don't even realize, like without even trying to, they just become like one mind.
Like they actively have to try to
yeah.
separate rather than actively try to like bridge that gap.
Well, Fitz does, but Night Eyes doesn't
Yeah,
care.
yeah.
He's
Also,
like, this is packed.
a part later on where he I think it's later on in this section where they're playing and Fitz says like, and then I was a person again. Like he got
Yes.
so into it, he like fully thought he was another wolf, and then he had to step back and be like, "Whoa,
Mhm.
now I'm human and my feet are cold," or whatever. Like,
Well,
it's
and
just
in one of the like chapter intros, it does talk about people kind of having an affinity for one specific animal. So I wonder if some like witted people don't find that or haven't found that. Like I wonder if Burrich would feel the same way about the wit if he like had that where it was such a strong thing where you kind of become one being. Because I don't
I
think he
think
has that with Vixen, even though Vixen,
they're
no
bonded.
doubt in my mind, was his like wit bond partner or
Yeah,
whatever.
I feel like he probably like has like the impression or like the knowledge that like something like that exists. He just like holds himself at like 2 arms lengths from it.
He's got to be safe to do it, to
Mhm.
stay away.
I do think it's interesting that Burrich bonded with hounds, Fitz bonded with animals of the canine family, like dogs or wolves. And then Dutiful has a like wit hound in Fitz and the Fool. Like it's almost a weird like paternal thing.
I wonder if it does kind of run in their blood and that like it's your certain like who you're descended from, who they bonded with, or who they like spent enough time with. Like if you go far back enough where before the wit or whatever, what animals they spent enough time around. And that kind of creates this affinity for the animal.
I think the last thing like that I had for this section was at one point Fitz like when like essentially Nighteyes jumps him and tries to like uh essentially kill him and then run away, but Fitz like overpowers him and is like, I am the wolf, you are the cub, you will obey me. And at this point, Fitz has established the dynamic. He has like in like the future chapters when like Nighteyes is like, yes, we are pack. Like, no, you can't. There's no excuse, Fitz. You established the dynamic.
Yeah, you
It's all
can't
on you.
undo it. You can't undo asserting your dominance over this animal and like him just following you because that's how it is. You can't take
Mhm.
that back now.
Yeah, and it's not even like a misinterpretation on Nighteyes' part where it's like, uh,
No,
so
Fitz
I
made
like
it
this.
perfectly clear.
Yeah, Fitz is like hierarchy. Mm.
And then he's like, but actually, you're on your own. Like, so rude.
Okay. So, do you guys have anything else you want to say about Nighteyes? This section?
Not for this chapter, but I've got a lot to say about him in
Oh yeah.
general.
Mhm.
Same.
Okay, so the next chapter, and I guess our first actual official chapter for this episode, is chapter 5, Gambit. So, lots of stuff ends up happening in this chapter. Um, I'm not exactly sure what the titular Gambit is specifically referring to. Um, but it's like we have Fitz like talking to and meeting with Kettricken for probably the first time since they're back in Buckkeep. Um, and then ruminating on like the continued decision to help out with Cub slash Nighteyes, um, which we don't even know Nighteyes' name at this point. It's just Cub. Wow, I forget how long it takes to have that like exchange of the names. Um,
I think it's the next chapter. I think it's chapter 10 or 11. Because I know I was like flipping through and then I accidentally got to the section where he says like night eyes and he like tells Fitz his name.
It
mhm,
must be 11 because I read 10 and
Yeah,
it
then it's
hasn't.
definitely 11.
Yeah.
mhm. Yeah, and the big like showstopper final moment of the chapter is when Fitz does an actual human assassination on Virago, who is kind of a traitorous warrior who's kind of like rallying support against the Farseers. And so
And she's
and
also
in
like she's trying to get a king to like rule alongside her. She wants a
mhm,
strong man so that they can like rule the six duchies or something.
He
mhm.
doesn't actually kill her. Doesn't he just poison her and make her like
Yeah, he
disgusting?
disfigures her like mouth and that's like what the six
Yeah.
duchies views as punishment for lying or something like that.
So
Lying to your
she's
like
Mhm.
men.
yeah, she
Yeah,
ends
it's
up
just
just like sulking in the shadows in shame
pretty
for the
much.
rest of her life. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like, I guess in
There's an
relation to
interesting oh, sorry.
uh, I guess all I was gonna say is that like in relation to like the like whole Virago scene at the end, the actual intro ties in pretty nicely to that because they talk about the ancient code of conduct slash laws of hospitality. Um, and specifically, they forbid that those who shared salt at a man's table shed blood on his floor, which is something that comes up later in that very scene. So I think it's one of the most like direct one of the chapters where the intro is most directly related to what's going on in the chapter, and I'm like, cool. Could we do this more often? Could they be like?
Please.
Mhm. But yeah,
It's 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 interesting to see how the chapter intros do kind of connect with the story later on though. Like I wonder
mhm,
how she did it if she wrote the whole book and then put in the chapter headings after, or if it just kind
mhm,
of like came to her and she wrote them all.
mhm,
Yeah, that would be a good question if I ever got to ask her anything.
mhm.
Maybe that'd be one of them. 'Cause
Tell me
that
about
would,
the chapter headings. The
yeah, when did you
intros.
write them? One of my notes for this chapter is we get that metaphor again from Patience, the two saddles, one horse.
Mhm.
Says it, and Birch is like, "Where did you hear that?" And he says, "Patience." And I think this whole part is kind of like a clue that Birch is still holding a torch for her because he's like very affected when Fitz says that. He's like, "She said that to you?" And then all of a sudden just drinks his entire brandy, which is disgusting, and then stands up and is just like, "Let's go to town."
And then they get shit faced together.
Yeah. Yep.
I also wonder if like that's what Burrich said to her, or like that was something that was said when they were kind of breaking up, and that's why it messed with him so badly
Oh no,
because
like
it brought back
100%.
all those memories.
It
Like,
had to have been.
because he's like, yeah, like my duty is to my lord chivalry. I can't wear a horse can't wear two because and that's such a Birch thing to do. Like even in this
Right.
chapter, like he makes everything into animal metaphors because like they're talking about like Molly, and then he's like, ah yes, red glint to her coat, and I'm like,
Yes,
This is a human being, not a horse.
I thought that
Right.
was so funny.
Mhm.
Well, and Burge is just so stubborn. Like, tons of people are soldiers and have relationships. They're not mutually exclusive. And he's
Yeah.
like, I cannot be a right hand man and have a girlfriend. Like,
Mhm.
okay, Burridge. Sure. Like,
Yeah, I think it's probably a combination of just like Burrage like being afraid of commitment, but also like I also think there's like a difference just between being like a regular soldier and being like it sounded like being the right hand man and given how often chivalry like traveled and stuff, it definitely sounded
Well,
like
and the right-hand man to the king in waiting. Like that's
yeah.
definitely, I
but
think,
then
higher up.
Patience goes and marries the actual king in waiting. So it's not like that would have been a deal breaker
Yeah.
for her. Burrich just like removes himself from the situation before. Like
Mhm.
he doesn't give it a chance at all, which is
Well,
so
didn't chivalry start like developing feelings for patients, and then I think Birch decided like to get out of the way. At least that's kind of how I always just like pictured it going in my head. I was like,
yeah,
Birch
me
loves chivalry enough to like lose patience.
side. Yeah, that's a good. I like never thought about what the timeline would be. So, and of course he would use that as a like excuse.
Yeah, definitely.
A horse can't have two saddles or whatever he says.
Which I think is
I
like
just
it's
think they
interesting
all
because
should
I
have
think
gotten together.
true.
I think they just needed to be together, all three of them. And they would have been happy, and chivalry would still be alive, and they would raise Fitz very well.
Yes. And then they could all raise Fitz together, and it would be great.
Yes, definitely.
And Fitz wouldn't need like other father figures like Shade
Because he'd have
or
two.
Barry.
He'd be
Yeah, yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah. He wouldn't need to be an assassin, and then we wouldn't have this series at all.
But he'd be happy. So
Mm,
that's kind of all
mm,
that matters, right?
pretty
Right.
much.
Someone write an AU.
Please.
The mhm. um
We get the
Oh,
first mention of Rosemary in this chapter.
Ugh, I
oh yeah.
know.
Your note about Rosemary had me howling when I read it. I was just like, they're just just so like direct. Like first mention of Rosemary here, little dick, and I'm like, huh? Like Leah, that is a child, a child who did a little bit of
I'm
murder,
so
but
suspicious
like,
of her. I'm so suspicious of her already. I'm like, bitch, you're definitely listening to everything they're saying.
You're listening to everything, you're greasing the stairs. I hate you.
you're crossing the stairs, yeah. But
Like,
I
I
need to
love
like,
that Fitz is suspicious of her throughout the rest of the entire series because that's the way that I am as a person.
Yes.
Like, I don't care that you were a little kid when you did that. I remember.
I will never forget.
yeah. Does Rosemary get like a bigger part to play in like Fits in the Fool? Because I remember in Tawny Man, it's just kind of like, who's Shade's apprentice? It's Rosemary. Okay, moving on. And I'm like, huh? I would expect her to play like a bigger role.
It's bigger, but she's still not like a main character, if I
Yeah.
remember correctly.
Okay. Yeah, because I feel like that would be an interesting dynamic or just like character to explore in general. So
There's also a part when Kettricken's like feeling sorry for herself because she's just like alone in her room and doesn't know what to do and wants to help Verity with stuff but can't and stay protected because you're the only person that can like be the queen, and he's basically saying like you're the only person that can bring about an heir. And she says, surely if only I can bear his heir, only he can sire it, which I thought was interesting because
Eyeballs, eyeballs, eyeballs emoji.
yeah.
yeah, in my
The-
notes app on my phone I had the eyeballs emoji typed out, but I didn't put that in the Google Doc.
Oh, we know what's happening.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I didn't
like
pick up on that at all, but then I saw that I'm like, oh my god, if that's actually planned, then that's crazy. And it
right, the
feels so
seed is
pointed.
planted here. Right. It's like you're literally saying it to the person who will sire
Mhm.
Your child.
the heir. Hmm. Very interesting.
Okay, wait, while I guess like just before we move away from Rosemary, because I don't know that we're gonna talk much about her. Um, one line there's a line where Fitz is mentioning, I suddenly wished I were 8 again and I could join her on the floor. Um, and I really like this line really stood out to me because it shows how like Fitz is still like, well, even though he's transitioning to adulthood, he's still like struggling with the responsibilities that he's been given. He's like, I not want to have to be advisor to Kettricken. I kind of just want to be the person to hang out in the corner. Because then we know that Fitz did that a lot, would just like
With
hang
some
out in the corner.
sweets.
Yeah, yeah. But it's also really tragic because like Fitz is assuming this level of like innocence and lack of responsibility for Rosemary, but we know that she's being led down like the same, like her childhood is being stolen in the same way that Fitz's childhood was stolen. So
Yeah.
it's like if you're connected in any way to the Farseers or like just the castle in general, there's no chance at a normal childhood or life.
Yeah, someone's gonna use you.
Mhm.
There was one thing I noticed in this chapter that I noted down because I remembered in a previous episode, Alex, you were talking about like the age gap between Verity and Regal. And Fitz mentions less than a decade of years separated our ages between him and Regal. So I think Regal is really like just in the middle between like Verity and Fitz.
Yeah. And he might be even like, I bet there's like 8 years between Regal and Fitz. And then there's like 10 between Regal and Verity.
Right, because if Chivalry was like 20 when Fitz was born, that would have made Verity only like 18 at that time.
Mhm.
So that would make total sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because then Regal's a teenager when he sees Fitz for the first time, and then he acts like a little pouty baby like he is.
Yeah. Yep.
This is just like very broad, but I love reading that like winter is approaching and like at Buckkeep right now because winter's like coming to the northern hemisphere, and I just love reading about chilly things like as the weather's getting cold here itself. So it's like I can put myself in Buckkeep, and like when I'm walking around I can pretend that I'm like just going about Buckkeep town or something like that.
Yeah, it fits the vibe. These are books that, like, to me, are best read, like, with a candle, like, cozied up and, like, hot tea. Because it
Yes.
makes you feel cozy, and then you're like, I'm so happy I'm not in a cold dungeon. Like,
Yes. I'm glad I'm not getting tortured by my uncle.
right.
I have been like reading it by like either like candlelight or fire because that's my room back there. And the reason I'm in this like big hallway place and not in my room is because the light in my room doesn't work. So if I want to read at all, I have to like get like some other source of light. So I definitely been feeling like Fitz like sneaking
Vibe.
around. Yeah, just like
You're channeling Fitz.
Are you
mhm.
using a bayberry candle?
Oh, I wish the
I went and smelled all the candles at Marshall's the other day, and I was like looking to see if they had a bayberry one, but they didn't.
Dang.
Yeah, I feel like Bayberry is just like a rare thing. I was also looking for like wintergreen, just because like uh, I don't know if it's this chapter or another one, but Fitz like mentions that Molly loves wintergreen. But yeah,
I
This is a
think it's a
side.
couple I think it's a couple chapters in, and then he like pretends like he thought it was for patience, but it's really not.
Yeah,
yeah.
you put it.
It's you sneaky bastard.
Um, this is not related, but I was watching like another movie or something, and they mentioned a Winterfest, and my heart like stopped in my chest because I was like, nothing good happens at Winterfest. And everything was fine in the movie, of course, but like every time there's Winterfest in these books, some shit goes down. Like,
Mhm.
Yeah, that's actually the truth. It's
Yeah,
unsafe.
evil Christmas.
It's like the Ides of March here, but it's Winterfest. Beware the fest of winter.
Mhm. Oh yeah, my birthday is the Ides of March, which always a real auspicious thing to have it land on. Um, Oh yeah, I guess like we're kind of just jumping around, but it's fine. But like at the start, Birch is like, "Dog, you're letting yourself go. Like, damn, bitch, you live like this." And then it works, and I like I get like I feel like if anyone else had tried to like tell this to Fitz, Fitz would have been like, I don't get it. Like, what's wrong? But then like Birch says it, he's like, "Yeah, okay, sure, I guess so. I'll try to improve." Um, But yeah, like it's so funny how like Fitz just needed like a little self care in his life, or needs someone to tell him like you need to take care of yourself. Um, because
Birch
he's
lives in such an austere way that if Birch is saying like, dude,
Yeah, then it must be bad.
pretty bad.
Mhm.
If you're catching Birch's attention with your like untidiness, you got a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like that like he mentions that like yeah, even if you don't see her, she sees you. Um, when referring to like how Fitz should present himself so that like he appears more of a man to Molly. But I also think this comes up like because later on like we have Regal and Fitz's like first face-to-face interaction since they returned from the mountain, and then Fitz mentions that Regal doesn't jostle him as he once would. And I think that like that shows subtly that Regal is scared of Fitz, and I think that's probably also due to Fitz's like recovery and like recuperation. So like Molly probably isn't the only one who's seeing the effects of like Fitz's like I guess just like return to strength.
Oh,
We've seen
definitely.
yeah,
And
we've
then
seen other
later
examples of that.
on,
Yeah.
yeah, in this section we see like Regal try and push him and Fitz like doesn't move at all. He's like, "You actually put some effort into that?" Do you want to try
Yeah,
a little harder next time?
which it's so gratifying, especially given because we mentioned like Fitz earlier had that promise to himself was like, I'm not going to show weakness in front of Regal, and instead he's just like,
And
yeah,
now he doesn't even have to do it. Like he doesn't have to try to be strong because he just is. Like he built up his strength and his body is healing and he's growing and he doesn't have to be like putting on a facade of strength and like health because he
mhm,
has that now.
mhm. Yeah. Honestly, like Regal is so weak that I'm surprised that Regal even enjoys like horse riding because horse riding hurts, y'all. I feel like that would not agree with like Regal's like general temperament. I guess maybe he
Yeah.
only does it to get with Kettricken and doesn't like it generally. But like that always surprised me. I was like, huh?
Yeah. I feel like he would like the slow like canter through the town to like show off what he's wearing and like where he's going with like an entourage, but I don't see him like hunting for sport on like a horseback like Verity would.
I
Hmm.
feel like he'd be the type of person that like would let the noble wound the animal and then he would like
He would
be
come
with
in
the
and kill it.
buffalo and then like take a picture with it like a big game hunter.
Hmm. Yeah.
He's
He'd be like, look what I took down all by myself.
Yeah.
if this was basketball, he would be the person like pass to me, pass to me, pass to me. Like the other person like dribbles all like full court,
All the
and
way
then
up.
like
Yes.
yeah.
Yep. That would be Regal. One thing I noticed in this chapter was there's a part where it mentions that some random person in Buckkeep Town says that'd be the bastard by the look of him, and it made Fitz feel like really uncomfortable and vulnerable. And it stood out to me because he's like that throughout the whole series, but I always attributed it to later books where he like has to hide the fact that he is who he is because people kill him. Or like everyone knows who he is. So it's like exacerbated by that level of danger, but he's always been that way. He's always been like uncomfortable with the attention and uncomfortable with people knowing who he is and whatever. And I wonder where that comes from.
I think he's also uncomfortable with the fact that people know who he is, but he doesn't know who they are. And it makes him like a little suspicious. I mean, definitely being like Chade's apprentice, you're going to be suspicious of everything all the time and paranoid for no reason. But I
Yeah.
think that this kind of makes sense because if his life is in danger anyways, having strangers know about him and like know exactly who he is just by his looks and him not have any clue who this random ass person is, like that would
Mm-hmm.
stress me out a little bit too.
He also like the first time he ever people will kill you just because you are the bastard.
Hmm.
So that probably planted a seed of like it's dangerous to be me.
Yeah, I think like this
Which
is
is
this is like a continued thing of like Fitz grappling with being like recognizably Farseer. Like there's also like two other moments where like again like when he first meets Regal, he like Fitz has like this shocked moment where he's like, "Oh, hold on, we're really alike, like visually now. We both have like the mark of the Farseers." And then later on, at the very tail end of the chapter, um, you have like Duke Brondi being like, "Yeah, you resemble your father more and more every day," and it's sort of this thing of like you are no longer just these, you're also visibly a Farseer, and that puts additional like eyes on you and additional potential for like manipulation or whatever. Um, but yeah, and also speaking of Chade, like being Chade's apprentice, um, Fitz really like goes, Chade's training of me seduced me into spying on her when talking about Molly, and I'm like, no, dog, that's all you. That is 100% you.
It's you being a
Like,
little creepy teenage boy.
yeah, he like breaks into her room later. I'm
yeah.
like, But it's like,
No wonder she's throwing a fucking knife at you. You snuck into her room and tried to like breathe on her. You creep.
yeah, like
Like, I
mentally,
get why
rereading
he
this, like,
does it. Like, he thinks that Regal's gonna kill her, but I feel like he could have done it more tactfully.
He's just looking for excuses to go and visit her.
mhm.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's not worried that someone's going to sneak in and kill her that night. He's just like, well, there's this threat. I better go check on her just in case, to be sure. Because, like, what
Right.
if something happens? And if I don't look now, like, she could be dead. So I better go check on her and make sure she's breathing.
I also subconsciously think that he was like, everyone else is occupied with this like feast thing, and they probably like Lacey, Patience, Shade probably won't notice if I just tiptoe over here.
Yes.
Yep.
Sneaky, sneaky.
I wonder if he, like, later on when he goes to do the whole Virago thing is where he meets Celerity. And I wonder if he would have been more receptive to her if he hadn't been like so obsessed with Molly.
I
at
think
this-
so.
Yeah.
I think if
Yeah,
Molly wasn't in the picture in this book, he would still be like thinking about her and like wondering about her, but he's kind of got that mentality of like out of sight, out of mind, just because
Yes.
that's who he is. So I think if we had gotten this far into the book and Molly hadn't shown up and she was like still somewhere else in like Silt Bay or whatever and it was fine, he would definitely have been like, I think, a little bit more flirty.
I think he's ripe with hormones and attachment issues. So he was just waiting for somebody, and
Mhm.
Molly was there. So if it
Yes.
hadn't been Molly, he'd probably be equally obsessed with Celerity.
Yeah.
And isn't there like, doesn't he like meet Celerity in like in the final trilogy when like his identity is finally exposed to everyone by Starling, and then there's like a thing, there's like they have like a little like moment of like missed connection there
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She's your identity.
Yeah, and like I even in this chapter, he's like, wow, yeah, she's like really intelligent and can like hold a conversation, which I think like that's definitely like a big thing for Fitz. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he doesn't talk to enough women because I feel like a lot of them can hold conversations and he just doesn't realize that they're not all stupid.
Right.
fair, but I think
And
it's
he
also
always thinks,
like I think it's almost the reverse where like I think Fitz sometimes is very like esoteric in the stuff that he like cares about or like is very. So I think that like for him it's like, wow, they can talk about this thing I like, when realistically just like everyone else has formal training in how to hold polite conversation. Fitz, you're the only one who's just like, uh, I like the Elderlings. They're pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um, I'm like looking at my notes here, and I have so much. I feel like our notes for this. It's gonna seem absurd how many notes we have for this chapter, but I think we have more notes for this chapter than we do for like the next two combined. It's just
yeah,
Yeah,
we.
I think there's
And
so
this,
much.
I'm scrolling through, and this chapter is definitely the beefiest.
Mhm.
There's something that I was just reading through our um chapters or through our notes and then I just lost what I was going to say. So it doesn't even matter. Oh, okay, I got it. I got it. So in my note, I said like I love how Fitz still speaks like a prince and he's got that kind of air of royalty and eloquence to him when he's like defending the Six Duchies and he's like defending the Farseers to Virago. And he still carries that through him, like that we see that kind of persona of this like princely Fitz show up again later on. I think in the last chapter that we read in this, or the chapter before, where he's like berating the guards and he's like, how could you not know that this was the queen? She's literally wearing purple and white and she's covered up. Like, you guys didn't think to question all the people who go in and out of Buckkeep? And he just like took on that leadership role, even though like Birch is like, you need to calm down, bro.
It comes so naturally to him.
Yeah, it definitely does.
Yeah, because and like I noted a line here. I found myself caught up in my own words, for I believed in them, which is even like this whole thing is like rehearsed to a point in a charade, right? But like it
Yeah.
works because Fitz, despite everything, he functions best when he's being honest and direct because he just has like that natural thing in him. And
Yeah.
we see it's really interesting to see that here and then see it paralleled in how Kettricken operates throughout the rest of the section because they're so similar in how they have that sort of like intuitive, very honest approach to like leadership and especially like the way that both of them take on like camaraderie to the people around them or their people
Hmm.
where they feel that like sense of responsibility. They see it as like kind of like a shared relationship rather than like a superiority thing. So
And then people kind of gravitate towards them.
mhm.
There's a part in a later chapter where Shade is like praising Kettricken and he says, "Would that we still had your father and like her paired with him," which I thought was interesting because later on like I think it's in towards the end of Tawny Man they crown Fitz like King of the Shadows, and it's basically him and Kettricken like working together to rule the six duchies, and they bring them into this like kind of enlightened era. So that almost happens because they say so many times throughout this whole series how similar
How
Fitz is
much?
to Rory.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I noted that as well, and I was like,
Yeah. Foreshadowing, maybe?
oh yeah. One line that I found like particularly noteworthy um, was this is like Fitz is talking about like how he's no longer like part of the stables or stable life, and he says, "I had moved on to another life. I could not expect the old one to be held ajar for me forever." Um, which I think like it's one of those lines that just makes sense in context, but also like you read it and then apply it to like lots of what Fitz does in like Tawny Man and stuff, and it really shows this philosophy of like Fitz like sometimes has like a really bad judgment on like how over some parts of his life need to be and how like inaccessible they are, and it's just like you can like reclaim this part. The only part that I feel like is super weird is when he starts like going after Molly right after Burge died, which like no, let's leave that
Yeah.
part of your life. Let's leave that door very shut.
Close that door.
Yeah, but everything else, it's like yeah, you like the door isn't as shut as you think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess just like continuing to go down my list of notes. Fitz like when talking about Nighteyes or like why is he choosing Nighteyes over the potential risk of like losing Burge's friendship is my only answer was I had no choice. Um and I really like this idea where it's like just the values I have and who I am as a person makes me unable to do anything else. And I think it's also kind of like mirrored elsewhere where it's like uh this idea that like fate isn't set in stone because like that's how things are supposed to be. Fate happens because people are who they are and they would not change how they behave because of the people they ended up as. Um
Hmm.
and I like this gave me vibes of like in like Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. There's this whole thing where like Harry starts to like obsess over the prophecy and then like Dumbledore has to be like, "Dog, like, okay, regardless of the prophecy, you would still want to kill Voldemort for like what he did to your parents, right? So like the prophecy saying that like neither can live while the other survive, it doesn't really like add new context because it's not like it's not like setting out new rules. It's just defining the ones that already exist. And I think that's like a really interesting
Hmm.
way of like looking at how like fate functions in general, but
Yeah.
also like I I think applying that perspective to Farseer as well. Mhm. Oh yeah, also,
And speaking of fate,
go
Fitz
ahead.
is like, I dare not spend too many hours with the cub lest we bond. okay, Fitz, we all know, like, you're going to. I
No,
just
and I
thought it was
like how he
kind of
says that as
cute
though
that
the
at
ship has
first,
not already like completely sailed.
I know,
Yeah.
like it's not happening already. But he's like trying his best to be faithful to Burrich and like not bond with Nighteyes, even though like you took him home. You made that decision. Like the bond is there, it's strengthening now.
Mhm. The bond was there from the moment you guys like Pacific Rim drift compatible together when in like
Yeah,
the market. Yeah.
definitely. Even like before he saw Nighteyes, when their like anger was connecting, like that was it. That was game over, boy.
Yep.
Oh yeah, there's a line where Fitz is like, "There's only one other creature in the keep, as lonely as I." And when I first read this line, I thought he was referring to the Fool because we've seen how lonely the Fool is and all of that. But it's
Same.
referring to Kettricken, which obviously makes sense for Kettricken as well. But like, I feel like omitting the Fool here kind of shows that like Fitz is just like not thinking about his friend as much as he should be because
Well, and I think it's not even it's like the Fool, it's Kettricken, and then it's also Night Eyes. Like they're all so isolated and alone right
Hmm.
now. And then it's kind of
and patience,
cool to
honestly.
see they all become like part of Night Eyes' pack. They're like, this is pack. Like Kettricken, the Fool, and Fitz all become like their family
Mhm.
by the end of this series. Not I don't think by the end of this like story, but by the end of the trilogy for sure.
Mhm. Oh yeah. And in what is becoming a regular segment on these episodes, hashtag Fool Watch, which is me just looking for times when Fitz calls himself a fool and
I
just going,
noted one.
the, oh, okay, wait, go ahead, go ahead. Is it in this chapter?
So, yes, where Fitz calls himself a fool for potentially bonding with the Night Eyes. Was that the one you caught?
I think so. I was a fool rather than a man who could turn aside from the plea of a beaten and starved cub. Yeah. The, there's also, and there's a second one where um, Fitz is talking about Molly, and he's like, "Will you think me a fool that I sat close by the candle and smelled its scent, or took the chair that I might lean against her snow-damped cloak as I sat?" And like the fool as Lord Golden was maybe not this stupid over Fitz, but I definitely could see like Golden Fool era Lord Golden being like this kind of silly over Fitz, especially with like outfitting him and like showing him off and that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. Um,
Yeah, I love when he dresses him up like a paper doll.
Oh,
yeah.
I found a different one that you didn't have.
Ooh, nice.
He says it twice in this paragraph. He says, only a fool would indulge in something that inevitably led to such a loss. So I was a fool rather than a man. So you had the second one, but I had the first one.
Okay, nice.
So that's three.
That's three in the same chapter. Um, oh yeah, and like, oh yeah, back with like how the fool like dresses him up like as a paper doll. There's a line which always sticks with me, which was, um, I forget what it was, but like one of like the tailors like takes Fitz's measurements, and Fitz is like, "Oh God, no! Now Lord Golden could inflict stylish clothing on me as he will," and I love the word choice there. Mhm.
Well, he says that same thing in this section. When he's like talking about the clothes that Mistress Hasty inflicted upon him, and I can't remember what it's talking about, like like what section it's about, but he definitely says that in here, and I almost made note of it, but I was like, it's fine.
Got you.
That's
I mean,
like
it's like
such a theme.
Fitz
Fitz
hating
Fitz,
all the
complaining.
clothing.
Fitz complaining about
Fitz is just like,
clothing.
"What's wrong? I'm wearing like a leather jerkin
I
and
hate my
a nice
clothes.
yeah." I mean, they're tattered and dirty, but that's just because I've been living in the forest like an animal for several months.
Yeah.
Like, come on now, guys. The- um, okay, did you guys have any other notes for this chapter?
I think I have one or two. One
Okay.
is the small details that continue to pop up just amaze me because in this chapter, Patience expects Fitz to like improve upon playing his sea pipes, and we see the sea pipes come from the begin or from like the middle of the last book where Lacey like gives them to him and she's like practice like learn to play a tune so that like Patience will be happy, and she's still in this book. This is like the first little mention of something like that where she's still like expecting him to learn how to play that. So like the continuation through this stuff is like incredible.
Huh. Does that come back in Assassin's Quest? Because like he does travel with like that
I'm not
bard.
sure.
He travels with like two different like bard groups or whatever. So I like
Yeah,
it would
he
be
might.
if it, I wouldn't be surprised if it came back, but like I don't remember it coming back.
Yeah. It's such a small detail though, so I feel like it's something that we would just skim over anyways, especially on
Mm-hmm.
the first read.
Mm-hmm.
And then let me see. I kind of compared the way that Fitz is with Kettricken is the way that Shade is with Fitz. So like Fitz kind of becomes Shade a little bit for Kettricken, and I kind of love that.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that he doesn't like it because he views it as like kind of being slimy and sneaky. But he's so fit for it because he's so when he needs to be and when it's not dealing with bastards, he's so perceptive and he can like tell all the things that are going on in court and what maybe Kettricken's ladies are thinking and how she can improve the relationship between them.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's very interesting because like this is like a necessary education on like Buckkeep politics in general or specifically. Um, but by the time like Tawny Man rolls around, we see that like both Fitz and Kettricken have grown enough that they're like, yeah, we don't really like need Shade's like advice or even like style of ruling anymore. It's like
Yeah,
we can take the training wheels off and learn to run this country the way that we think it should be rather than the way that it has been.
yeah. I think there was one last thing. Oh, I talked about the Elderling Relic. And
Mhm.
I love that Fitz thinks it's probably fake, because he just thinks that they look like little fine, fish scales, but it's definitely real, right?
Mhm.
Just because elderlings are scaled, so it would make sense if, like, they took some off of a dead elderling's body.
Yeah, like, but they just
Or
like
a
dismiss it
dragon.
as like this is just
That's true.
fake. Like, look, it just looks like fish scales. But yeah, the
Well, they
and again, like,
mention in
go ahead.
sorry, my computer just froze. Did I miss something?
Oh no,
No.
I just said go ahead, and then I forgot what I was gonna
Oh,
say.
sorry.
Anyways, so it's all good.
It froze right when you said that. So, I was gonna say they mentioned that like in live ships when they would open the cocoons, they like a dragon would be half formed in there. So it could be maybe from one of those too.
Mm,
But it's definitely real
I think so.
magical scales. It's not just random fish scales like Fitz believes. But I was just so amazed at how much detail Hobb already has about like the real Elderlings and like this whole world just in the second book before anything else has been written. Like it's incredible.
mhm.
Yeah, it really is.
Oh, one thing you noted
But
that
I
like I completely missed is I wonder if they poisoned Shrewd's old serving man to replace him with someone loyal to Regal, and I was like, yeah, totally. Um,
I
and I
assumed
think
they did.
yeah, like, and I'll have to like read ahead and like see if this is the case. But I remember like they even like mention a type. Like I think Fitz like blows like this poison into this guy's face at the very end when he's like going to see Shrewd, which is like, hey, in small doses this causes like a coughing fit over time. But then he just he just like blows like a lethal dose into his face or something. Like maybe it wasn't that moment, but I feel like I remember the specific type of poison that could like cause like slow coughing to death being mentioned at some
Yeah,
point, and
I'm
I was
sure
like,
there's something.
Well, I feel like she wouldn't, like, Hobb wouldn't refer to a death as, like, it's called, like, unexpected or unexplained or there's some word, I didn't note it down, so I don't remember exactly what it is, but it was something enough that stood out that I was like, he was poisoned.
Mhm.
Like, I don't.
I'm just surprised that like anybody associated with Regal had like the patience to make it not just an immediate death.
Right. Or
Because
that
I know
Regal.
if Regal had his way, he'd be like, just kill him right now.
Right.
Honestly, I think probably the reason that it was like that is because Regal was gone in the mountains. So it's like, yeah, just out of sight, out of mind. Just kill him before I get back. Pretty much.
Hmm
That's a good point.
Maybe Galen was still like pulling the strings at that point. It was before he had died, so he like knew that it had to be a little bit more subtle than what Regal probably would have planned.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. Do we have anything else for this chapter? Okay. I had one last thing, which is when Fitz is going to the for Duke Brondy's table, and then he's getting served food, and they remember that he likes the mysterious spicy meat dish, whatever the spicy meat dish is, it returns. And I love how this is like a recurring detail. It's like, wow, everyone loves giving me the spicy meat dish. I really love the spicy meat dish. I'm like, what? I need to know. I forget what's the name of that like Instagram account that does like food
Oh,
for
it's
Buck.
Is it
recipes from
recipes
Buck.
from Buck?
Oh my god,
Yeah.
I need to check them
We
out and see
have
if
to
see
see
if
if
they
she's done that.
yeah if they have spicy meat dish. There's no other detail about it. Spicy meat dish.
Can we put in a request?
Yeah, for spicy meat dish. If they don't already
I'm
have it,
pulling,
I'm definitely DMing them.
I'm pulling it up right now, so I'll
I know,
create.
I'm scrolling through to stalk it too.
Everything looks so good. But I
I know.
remember her posting once that she lost a bunch of pictures.
Oh damn.
Um,
I love that everything looks rustic, like it looks like it could
lots-
be straight out of the kitchens in Buckkeep.
Hmm.
There's a lot of meat stuff.
Maybe one of them is spicy meat dish.
Yep. Well, they always pull out specific, like the specific line or paragraph referencing that food.
Hmm
So
I
it
don't
was,
see anything from what I looked at, but I just did a quick
yeah,
skim.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I
If they
don't
don't have it,
either.
well then definitely gonna request that
We're
for our
definitely putting our request in. Can that be the next dish that gets cooked, please? Recipes at Buck. Or recipes from Buck.
recipes from Buck.
I went all the way down to the bottom and I clicked on everything that looked like meat. That's not to say I didn't miss something, but I
Yeah,
did
we
not
can
see
we can do a
spicy
more
meat.
intense look through.
Right.
There's so
Deep
many. I
dive.
did.
Well,
Do they refer to
So
food
many
this
freedom.
much?
yeah,
Oh,
I should.
and there's still so much more for sure.
there's this fish chowder picture from Ship of Destiny. It looks so good.
All of the food looks so yummy. I want all the desserts right now. Like it all looks so cozy. And I wish
Look,
it would be so amazing if they had opened restaurants that served everything from like a certain book series. I
yeah,
would love that.
Mm,
I would
yeah,
go
like
there.
because I mean, okay, do you have like enough themed bars where they make like shitty cocktails based on books? Can we have like actual restaurants with food that's directly from the books instead of just like
Please.
inspired, please? Um,
Hmm. Like a fantasy restaurant where they have like something from Lord of the Rings and something from Farseer and something from I can't think of any other fantasy book right now for some reason.
the- um,
Okay, I need to get away from that. Otherwise, I'll look at their food all day and get
I know
hungry.
it's making me
Yeah,
hungry.
fair. But yeah, go follow recipes from Buck on Instagram. They do great work.
But speaking of Bayberry candles, here it is.
Oh my
They made
god.
them. Yeah.
Okay,
Are
so
they
say okay.
available for sale?
Yeah, we need to ask them the recipe, or I guess is it a recipe for candle? I don't even know.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
But homemade Bayberry candles. While we're speaking of random things that are like associated with this, I did want to give a little shout out to the Reddit like forged ones because they post memes of everything that is like Realm of the Elderlings and they're funny. Like and it doesn't have enough attention or enough people, but I definitely think that we need to gain that. It needs to gain some traction because it's good. And we
Yeah,
need
isn't it
some
only
more
like
memes to lighten up the depression of the series.
it's like 2 months old if I remember. It's like a really new.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
new.
Yeah.
and it's only got like 35 like members in it, so it definitely needs some
I'm
attention.
on that.
Oh
I
yeah.
need to
Okay.
join that.
It's it's pretty good. There was one that I saw like yesterday, which was 3 wolves and like 2 look like they're cackling, and then the one in the middle is like very deadpan, straight faced, and the 2 on the sides were Nighteyes and Fitz, and the one in the middle was Burrich, and I loved it so much.
I see it.
So that's so
There
funny.
was also a picture of a dog with a bunch of porcupine like
Yes, I saw
And
that
it's like,
one.
oh, Nighteyes.
it made me
Yeah.
laugh, and then I was like, "Oh, that poor dog."
I
Mm,
know. That must have been
that
painful.
porcupine dog. Yeah, that's an awful pun. Oh lord.
That was good. I like stupid puns.
Okay. Um. Okay, actually back on track. Probably, maybe for now.
Trying to circle back to
Yeah.
what this podcast is actually about, which is just the butt.
So we're on chapter 6, Forged Ones. This is a pretty short chapter, pretty transitional, and the main meat of this chapter is kind of Fitz returning to Buckkeep and then reporting to Verity and then getting a new mission uh, from Verity because Forged Ones are like closing in on Buckkeep or seem to be doing it. So Verity's like, can you go murder some of them for me, please?
There was a line here that reminded me a lot of B and the way B would describe Fitz later on. And it's Fitz describing Verity. He says, standing next to Verity was now like standing next to a different sort of heat. The strength of the skill radiated from him. I wondered if he strove to hold it in check, if it always threatened to spill out of him and spread his consciousness over the whole kingdom. Like, B refers to him as like a bubbling pot, where it's like
Yeah, it's
he's
all overflowing.
yeah, he spills out all over everything. So that's why, and she's so sensitive to it. So that's why she doesn't like him until he like learns to
Puts his
contain it.
walls back up. Because I think
Mhm.
he probably got a little bit lax with it because there weren't any skill users that were near him, so he kind of just didn't worry about it that much.
And I'm sure
And then with
Nettle was
B,
like Nettle and Thick were so used to it that they just kind of tune him out.
oh, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, and we know that being incredibly reckless and open with the skill is just a farcier trait, given dutiful as well. Just dutiful, like shouting,
Yeah.
like "Fitz, what are we
For
doing?" Like
royalty,
like
they're
and,
like
and like
not
Selden
that
is
good.
like, "Huh? Did I hear something?"
Right.
Yeah, they're not very good with their skill manners. They've got regular manners, but not when it comes to skill, that's for sure.
Yeah, which okay, this is something which if, I guess I'm jumping ahead a little bit here to like the intro of chapter 9, um, where Fitz is like it like because Fedrin is like because he's talking about how Fedrin is like, yeah, we need to like record skills and uh we need to like record like teachings of how to do tasks and like Fitz is like, do we need that? Like sometimes you can just only get it through firsthand experience. And then one of the things that he cites is the skill, how it goes through the blood. but the reason that all the Farseers are so like awful at skilling is because all of the competent skill masters died off without writing their knowledge, and then the skill scrolls were sold off. So I really like that as like coming back and rereading this, we see that as a counterpoint to Fitz's perspective at this point in the series, because it's just like
Yeah.
because the Fitz who's writing this doesn't realize the extent of skill knowledge that is contained in the skill scrolls.
Yeah. And I think the Fitz that's writing this doesn't even know that like dragons are a real thing. So
Mhm.
he's got a lot to learn still.
Yeah.
Right. And that half the skill scrolls or more are in Lovejaw with the pale woman.
Yeah, because it's so short, I didn't have like many notes for this chapter. But like the start,
Yeah.
like you also noted you noted this for the next chapter, Leah. But like every time I read this chapter, I'm just like so perplexed that Kettricken is just like chilling and like riding with Regal and being like, haha, so great. But like
I know.
I'm like trying to rationalize it, and I guess that like she was able to forgive Fitz despite him assassin like coming to assassinate her brother and then like almost assassinating her brother maybe. So like I guess she does have like a generally like forgiving or like ability to like look past flaws nature, but also I'm like, man. Mhm.
Well, I also think that Regal is the only truly familiar face that she sees at Buckkeep because he was at like Jompe before anyone else came because he was kind of courting her for Verity. So she's
Mhm.
known him the longest. And then like he's probably the only male figure that she really gets to hang out with and talk to besides Verity, who's like never really around. And he's probably the closest thing to Verity that she can get at times. So she kind of wants to give him the benefit of the doubt just because she must be so lonely. And then there's this familiar face that's like trying to reach out to her. So she wants to like at least see if he can be a good guy or something.
He
And like
also
she's so lonely.
the whole time he was in the Mountain Kingdom, he was courting her, and we all know Regal can like turn on the charm when he wants to. And he was courting her for Verity, but really for himself because his whole
Yeah.
plan was to kill Verity and marry her himself. So it's like he's really manipulative and charismatic, but I don't know. I just don't feel like any level of lonely could make me want to go horse riding with Regal. It's
Mhm.
really hard to like wrap my head around.
I think that Kettricken is still very young, and that's kind
Yeah.
of where it shows up in her still trying to trust the people who've like slighted her once, and she's like, "Let me give you the benefit of the doubt," but like she shouldn't be doing that. But I think she's gotta grow up a little bit more and learn that before she can really become her very queenly self.
She learns it, but she still maintains that because she even forgives, like, she forgives Rosemary and, like, lets her have a normal life. But it does take her time. Like, she hates her for a little while, but, like, she never loses that capacity. She gets smarter about it, but she doesn't lose the capacity to, like, eventually forgive.
It's
Which is
probably
it's such a
because
beautiful thing.
she was raised as the sacrifice
Mm-hmm.
because, like, she has to put everyone else's needs before her own, so it kind of just makes sense that she would forgive people because then, like, they'll continue living and get to go on and, like, hopefully become better people.
Right.
And I love like that framing as like as she grows, she just becomes smarter about it, but she doesn't lose it. Because I feel like in lots of like stories, there's this kind of like thing of like, yeah, being honest and trusting is bad, and then you get like
Yeah.
jaded, and that's like, but it's like no, you can still like grow and become like a more like canny and like like not world weary, like a more like worldly person, but also at the same time maintain that empathy and like trust. I think that's a really beautiful, yeah, framing of that.
Yeah, but I'm still mad at her for going horse riding with Regal.
No, yeah, totally
Yeah.
fair.
She's got to make better decisions for herself.
Right.
Mhm. My only other note for the chapter was Fitz saying, "I hoped I would not become too adept at lying to myself." Um, which like, oh no,
Oh,
he totally did.
Fitz.
He
Fitz,
totally
you're
does in some
already
here.
very good at lying to yourself.
Yeah. hmm
Yeah, you're only just going to get better to
Or
a
worse,
disturbing.
depending on how you look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. There was one other note that I had, and it's not anything like too spectacular. It's just that I really like this exchange between Fitz and Verity, where Verity's kind of venting because he's like, I really wish that your father were still king in waiting because, like, I felt more secure when he could make the decisions and I could just go along. And he says, do you know how easy it is, Fitz, to follow a man you believe in? And Fitz says, my prince, I believe I do. Because he, like, believes that much in Verity, and Verity realizes it. And there's a line where it says, he held my eyes with his, and I did not need the warmth of his skilling to feel the gratitude he sent me. And I just felt like it was a really sweet, like, bonding moment. Because Verity really, like, is super hard on himself, as I think all Farseers besides Regal are. And
Yeah.
he just thinks he's trash, and, like, it's so comforting to him that Fitz has so much faith in him. And that bleeds through to the reader, because I remember when I like was reading this book for the first time, once Verity left, like I didn't feel safe anymore. Because I was like, Verity's not here to protect us.
Yeah, what do
Like,
we do?
yeah, like you really get that like sense. Fitz feels comforted when Verity's there to like make the decisions because it's like a blanket of protection. Same with Burrich.
hmm Yeah,
I
and it's
think the
like
only
we see
note that
that like
I had. Oh, go ahead.
I just say that like we see Verity like he's really going through it in this section, and so I think having Fitz as someone who actually like looks up to him as a leader is sort of like the one consolation he has that like maybe I do deserve to be a leader. And like eventually he stops like faffing about and does like actually like like understand that he does deserve to be a leader, but it takes a while and it takes a lot of him
Yeah.
doing stupid stuff to the people around him.
I think the only note that I had left, well, the only note that I had, period, for this chapter was a quote from Verity, and he says, when do I not suspect conspiracies anymore? And I just feel so bad for him. Like, not only does he have to worry about the Red Ship Raiders and, like, the threat of always losing himself to the skill, he also has to be on guard in his own home because his brother is making multiple attempts to, like, take the throne from him, kill his wife, kill his, like, nephew, kill his dad. Like, Verity has way too much on his plate, and I feel like he needs to give himself some slack because I think that even if chivalry was in this situation, like, it wouldn't be perfect, and he would be struggling at just he probably wouldn't be struggling as much, but he would be struggling also, and Verity has this perfect image of chivalry in his mind where he's like, "My brother can handle anything," but I think that's just how younger siblings are. Like, you look up to your older sibling, like, they kind of
He's
know what to do
also
because they're like an extension of the parent because 'cause they're older.
he's also been getting that message ever since he was born of like chivalry's the leader, chivalry's the one
Yeah,
to listen to, chivalry's better than you. And he's still getting that message from Shrewd, like, oh, if only you were like chivalry or Regal.
mhm.
hmm
And like Fitz is the only person really like that he knows of that looks at him the way
As a
that he's
leader.
chivalry. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and it's just like, oh, what was I gonna say?
We're all losing our trains of thoughts today.
So,
I don't know what today is like.
mhm.
It's a rough one today.
See, my excuse is it's midnight over here. So, I'm
That's a good
gonna.
excuse.
Yeah,
I don't have one.
um, yeah, I forgot it. It'll come back to me like later, probably. Okay. Um. So, do we want to move on to chapter 7 then? If there's
Do you mean chapter 7 or do you mean just gushing about Nighteyes the whole time? Because I'm pretty sure that's what I did in chapter 7.
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah,
me
we can.
too.
I'm pretty sure that's the official title of the chapter. Just gushing over Night
Yes.
Mhm.
One thing I noticed in this chapter is well, it's very much like Fitz is kind of the alpha of the pack. Nighteyes even says like, "Teach me, it's your pack duty." But it's not very long before, I think it's as of like either the end of this book or beginning of the next book, where Nighteyes starts calling him little brother,
Mhm.
being like, "You're stupid."
Yes. The student has surpassed the master.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, yeah, dogs do grow faster than humans, so like Nighteyes like matures incredibly quickly, and it's like, yeah, okay, huh? Wow, you're still stupid.
Yep.
You're still stupid? Oh, okay, you're still stupid.
And then even when he dies, he like says that he always has to be the leader and like he's always the one running ahead. So of course he would die first to like
Show the
lead
way.
Fitz. Yeah. Ugh, my heart
Let's not,
is sad already.
let's not talk about that yet.
We have a couple books to go before that happens, but
I'm not ready.
still very rough.
Mhm.
Nighteyes just like cracks me up. The part where Fitz runs into Molly and all of a sudden out of nowhere, Nighteyes is like, "Female. Nice." And then it just says vast approval. Like
God.
for some reason the vast approval just like got me. I laughed out loud.
You know what? This feels like the first meme that if I was gonna put something on Forge Ones, just something with vast approval. That just feels like such.
It's
Yes.
Yeah.
it's so funny.
And I wonder, like, is this the only time that he truly, really approves of Molly for Fitz? Or
I mean,
like
he
like
gets
how
like
long does he approve of
owning
her until
Molly
he's
for
like, I want
Fitz.
you to be with Kettricken?
I think for like lots of this book, he's just kind of like, yes,
There.
have pack.
Yeah.
You like, but then like I think like after like getting to know Kettricken in the mountains, he's like, yeah, she's great. You should hang out with
She's the
Kettricken.
one.
Yeah.
I think it's when he gets her to like speak to him.
Mhm.
But then there's a part later on in this series where Fitz is like worrying about Kettricken, and Nighteyes is like, "You don't have to worry about her. She's fine. She's a good mate for he who leads," or whatever he says. I think it might be in like chapter 10. I don't remember where it is, but Nighteyes is like very complimentary to Kettricken. Like, she can handle herself. She has a blade or whatever.
But
Um,
I think he even says like she has like sharp teeth or something in like reference to like the
yeah.
blade or something.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, so yeah, even in this book,
Um,
Night Eyes has like, just like a high opinion of Kettricken, even before he's like trying to like ship
mhm,
Fitz in her.
Yeah.
right. Speaking of her, I feel so bad for her when she's getting attacked because she's just been like betrayed by Regal, and then she doesn't know where she is. It's completely unfamiliar territory. She's attacked by like Forge Ones. She's never encountered them before, so she doesn't understand who or what they are really. And then Fitz shows up and like she can trust and who she can't, and he like kind of poisoned her brother, but kind of not. So it's like her life is completely in his hands. It's like he could help her or hurt her, and all she can do is like hope. That would be really scary.
But I feel like she handles it so, so well. Like she is 100% the queen that Buckkeep and like the Six Duchies needs because she holds her own. fighting off the forged ones. Like, she really doesn't need very much help from Fitz, especially because he like misses a killing blow from one of the guys, so like she has to kill him anyways.
Mhm.
And then after that, she still has her like wits about her to yell like to me and take the lead running away. Like, she is such a strong leader,
Yep.
even in this like very traumatic, very scary crisis situation. Like, she's just, oh, she's
She's a
so impressive.
badass.
Yeah,
I
and
love her.
honestly, like, yeah, her only like the only thing holding her back is like her age and like her self doubt, both of which like fade over the course of this book because she has to grow up like
Yeah,
super fast. Um, but yeah, it's yeah, and like you mentioned, like it's so tragic as well because she's like it looks like no one has really like properly explained the concept of forged ones to her, and like there's something lost in translation because like she gets like she's like, oh
She
yeah, I heard they
thinks
lost their hearts, but like do they hate me that much that they would like kill me? She doesn't like get that it's like a
no.
supernatural thing until like
yeah, she
it's
thinks that
explained
like
more.
she's such a bad queen that six duchies people want to kill her. It's like,
Well,
no, baby.
something else I found suspicious about this situation was that she said one of them jumped from like jumped on top of her from a tree. And I just feel like the forged ones shouldn't have been that well prepared. So like,
Yeah.
it makes me wonder if they were even forged really to begin with, or if Regal just set up some guys and was like, just hang out here and I'll lead her to you.
Well,
It could be like a mix. Like there's
it could
like
be a
maybe
mix if she killed that one before Fitz got there, but if any of them weren't forged, I think Fitz would have
He would
sensed.
have felt it. So maybe that was the guy, the like first guy that she killed was the one that Regal planned on killing her. And then the forged ones just heard this fight
Mhm,
and this kerfuffle and then they came because they're like, oh, noise, so it's got to be something good like food or something. And
Yeah,
that's when they like attacked her like that.
mhm.
Because that
right.
first one seemed way too planned and like thought out to like
Also, like,
climb a tree and jump from the tree onto her horse's back. Like, that just doesn't seem like something a forged one would do, in my opinion.
well, it makes sense that Regal would do something like that because he's been taking her out on these rides, like basically planting the seed for something like this to happen. And then what are the odds that he leaves her like right when there are forged ones wandering around? Like he's banking on her getting attacked, but like
Right.
doesn't know for sure she's going to get attacked because forged ones are unpredictable.
So he's got to be sure.
Oh. Right.
And I bet that the fox that ran across their path was just one that he had somebody trap and then they let it loose so that he could have an excuse
Wait,
to like bolt off like that.
was there even a fox? I feel like if I remember right, I
I
feel like
thought so.
I thought that like Regal just like said there was one and
There was.
like and then
Maybe
just
he
like
did.
yeah, I need to like reread it more carefully. But I just remembered as like he was just like, look over there, a fox, and just like bolted off, and it's just like,
And
haha,
left.
keep him. Yeah.
I
Um.
could see it going either way. I don't remember specifically.
Yeah.
Mhm. I feel like training a fox and then like releasing it is like too planned for Regal style. Regal would just be like,
Yeah, that's true.
He would just lie.
mhm.
Yeah.
Um. Oh yeah, so like going back to Nighteyes, when like Fitz is like trying to like call it off with Nighteyes, I hoped he sensed also that I believed it was what was best for him. Much I reflected, as Birch had felt it best for me when he took Nosy away from me because I had bonded to the puppy. And it's like there's a whole like theme of like imposing your values on I guess like children or people who are like reliant on you. And then there's like this balance of like giving them the wisdom and experience of age that you have and allowing them to like discover it themselves and like how much of your own experience is like actually applicable to your child. Like the there's like a lot of that. And I feel this just one line where like Fitz is having the self-awareness of like, oh yeah, like just because it's my values doesn't necessarily mean that it's the right thing or that it
Mhm.
or is like a very like interesting reflection there. Also like reflection on like what is freedom because like can you call like it, Fitz is saying that it's freedom to like kick Nighteyes away, but Nighteyes is freely choosing to stay with Fitz. So there's sort of this thing of
Yeah,
like,
and then, like, abandoning a wolf who doesn't have a pack is kind of still like a death sentence for Nighteyes. Like,
mhm,
you're just choosing his death.
mhm. Also, speaking of pack, I love how in this chapter, like everything, just Nighteyes is like, oh yes, that is pack. Yes, like
Yes, he finds every excuse to say, like, this is pack, and the harder that Fitz tries to fight the fact that they're a pack, like, the more Nighteyes is like, "Yes, this is right, we're pack." I even said that. I noted something. It's like, yes, this is pack. To call when one needs help and to be always ready to hear such a call. We are pack. Like, I love that. And Fitz is like, no, you're supposed to stay out of my mind. And he's like, then how am I supposed to know if you're gonna need me?
and then he's like, I'll call you. And then Fitz is like, and then Nighteyes is like, yes, yes. And then when I need you,
I'll
I'll
be
call
listening.
you. That is the way of pack.
I love it.
Mhm. And
And
it's
I love
really,
that, like,
oh no, go
I
ahead.
love that Night Eyes, like, acknowledges that they're different, but he also acknowledges that, like, inside they're both so similar and they're both the same because they are pack.
Mhm. Yeah, the only time that like Night Eyes like disengages and like this is not pack is when Fitz is like assassinating the forged
The
ones.
forged ones.
But
Yeah.
also it becomes really interesting because I feel like as like especially even in like the next book, we see that like um Night Eyes like recontextualizes all of this and is like kind of like puts it in the framework of hunting and like understands like hey yeah this is like a different kind of hunt but it's like a hunt that like it won't fill your belly but it's a hunt that is necessary nonetheless and it's like one of those things where
Mhm.
like as Night Eye spends more time with Fitz and it's like gets into that human mindset starts to like shift into understanding these things but for now it's like yeah this is weird why are we killing for not hunt.
Something subtle that I noticed in this section where Fitz is having this conversation with Night Eyes is that he begins the conversation speaking out loud to Night Eyes, and then eventually he slips into using the wit and like just replying in his mind. And I don't think he even realizes that he does it, but it is definitely something I noticed. I was like, Fitz, you're bonding.
It's just didn't I'm not bonding, we are not pack. Like
Okay.
mhm. Meanwhile, like, Night Eyes is, like, literally and, like, mentally just, like, clinging to his back and just being like, "Ha ha ha, friend." Um, oh, yeah, also, I feel like this is the first time this book we get to see the Fool in such good form. There's, like, that whole section where, like, he, like, fends off Wall
Wall
Ass.
ass.
Yeah. The
I love that.
mhm. And just, like, classic Fool wordplay and silliness, and, like, it's like, ah, love it.
It's my favorite. Another thing that about the Fool that I kind of wondered about is so Fitz was talking about Ratsy and how like the Fool had a new scepter with like a different rat on it. And I'm just wondering, do you think that the Fool uses real rats that are found around the keep and like he just kind of stuffs them, or does he like make them out of cloth and stuff? And like does he get new ones just because the old ones are decomposing? Like how does
I
this
I
work?
mean,
hope
the
I
first
hope
Ratsy
not.
sounded like it was a real rat, right? So, like,
Yeah, I think they
Oh,
all are. And like maybe
wait,
he just
taxidermied?
yeah, that's what I'm
Hmm.
starting to wonder because this is a new Ratsy. So I'm wondering if like the old one got a little bit too ratty
I
and
don't like that.
run down. But I could
there's the
totally
old
see the Fool
Ratsy.
doing something like this to like make people a little bit nervous and stay away from him. And I love that
Yeah.
he like just sits in the hall, like the Great Hall, having a full on like conversation with Ratsy. Like I love Ratsy so much. And like he's not even like a character.
Mm-hmm.
I loved Ratsy until I thought that he might be a real taxidermied rat.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. It's just like I had never thought of it before then until now, and I'm like, huh, he could be a real rat.
I always
Yeah.
assumed it was a real rat, but like I never dwelled on like the implications of it until like the reread, and I'm like, that's kind of creepy. That's kind of not great. What's going on here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Um, oh yeah, there's a line where like Verity's talking about um how Fitz is skilling when he's sleeping, and he says, spill your most private desires out like a wolf howling into the night," and I'm like, more apt simile than you
I
know.
noted that too. I loved it.
Mhm. Yeah, and I don't know. I didn't note this one, but there's another point where like Verity. I think it's actually maybe the previous chapter where Verity is talking about how uh Forged One, like, animals can hunt in packs, like, and he uses wolves as a reference, and I'm like, that's a very timely reference there, given that like next chapter's all
Hmm.
going to be all about pack. Yeah, and I guess like my last note here was the line from Verity: "A man can be undone when his enemies learn what is dearest to him from his skill dreams," which kind of happens like several times throughout the series. I feel like most notably with like Nettle, like people finding about Nettle through Fitz's skill dreams. But just in general, like Fitz never quite learns to control his skill as much as he thinks he does, and that just comes back to
Yeah.
bite him again and again.
Like, even when he thought that he wasn't skilling, when he was out traveling around with Nighteyes, when, like, Dutiful and Nettle were little, they both say that they had dreams of, like, a man and a wolf.
Mhm.
So he was, like, accidentally, either they were skilling to him or vice versa, or a combination of both, which is probably the most likely. But, like, he's active in their lives without being directly active in their lives,
Hmm.
just via skill.
Those are my notes for this chapter. Do y'all have anything else? Or
Mm-mm.
I guess I
I
already
had
mentioned this like
one.
a little bit, where I was just like, but it's just like, man, Verity blunders this so hard. Basically, when like Kettricken comes back, he just really drops the
Yeah.
ball there.
Yeah.
My only my like last comment was about Verity too. And I was kind of wondering, do you guys think that Verity still wishes that Kettricken was like a soft, like plump queen from the Six Duchies instead of being this like strong, badass mountain sacrifice? Or do you guys think that like
I
he's
think
fine
he
with it?
does in this, like, first chapter, but by the time she, like, gives the speech and he realizes that she's, like, making something out of what could be a bad situation, I think by that point he understands better and, like, comes to respect her. Because then when Regal is like, who does she think she is? He's like, she's my wife and she's the queen. I think by that point he's, like, happy that she is who she is. But I
Yeah.
don't think by this particular chapter he's there yet. I think he's, like, jealous a little bit.
That's what I was thinking. I said in my notes for the next chapter that I feel like Verity kind of suffers from imposter syndrome. And Kettricken, he's kind of like upset that Kettricken is taking so quickly and easily to being the queen just because she's like was raised to be this sacrifice. And he kind of feels like maybe since he wasn't raised to be the king, then he wasn't meant to be the king. And so he's kind of jealous of Kettricken's ability to take on these roles so easily and then be so insightful and inspire like his people who he's been struggling to inspire since he like became king in waiting.
I mean, there's like a little bit of jealousy there, but I think that like because I think Fitz even notes that there's a little bit of jealousy. But I think it's also just like Verity is sort of like in this very like self-pitying mood in general in these chapters, and he's like, I don't know what to do. And I think that like both him and Kettricken, though mostly Verity, kind of like they're like talking past each other or have like these misunderstandings where it's like Kettricken is like, I want to help and do more for the kingdom, and then Verity is like, I like I feel like I need someone in my corner, and it doesn't feel like Kettricken's there. And then they finally, I think at this point they realize that like it's not the type of thing that we're expecting, but then like especially like in Verity's case, like this is still her being in my corner and being there for the kingdom. And so
Yeah.
the,
Mhm.
yeah.
She may not have been what I wanted, but she's exactly what myself and the kingdom need.
Exactly. This is definitely like Verity's like lowest point, not just as like the him being like really sad, but also I think in terms of like his character and his decision making, it's definitely like the point where he's at his poorest.
Mhm.
hmm And like obviously, there's a lot of
Luckily,
factors
it
that
doesn't
go into
last very
that.
long.
Yeah, luckily it doesn't last very long, and like there's definitely extenuating circumstances, such factors like he's shouldering like the entire weight of the kingdom essentially on his own. But also, those are reasons and not excuses. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, okay. I guess we're on chapter 8, basically. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
chapter 8, the Queen awakes. Um, and one thing I love is how like I love like the dramatic irony here, where the chapter opens up with the song of like the hunt, so you know kind of what's gonna happen despite how stuff starts off. And like there's like that moment where like um Verity is like working himself into a frenzy, and he's like, there will be a ballad written about this day, I wager. What shall it be called? And we already know what it's called because of the intro. And so
Yeah.
it just like having that to contextualize Verity's worries and be like, no, they're not actually real, is just like an interesting thing for us as the reader.
Mhm.
It's like so satisfying when Verity just punches Regal.
I loved it.
I love it so
He
much.
needs more face punches for sure.
Yeah.
The,
And then
the
he's
way
like,
that fits,
I'm killing my dad. And Verity's like, oh, are you? Are you
damn,
gonna
you're gonna be
kill
If
bleeding
you're
that
gonna be
much.
having your nose bleeding for 12 hours, like, come and see me because
You'll
I
be
want to see it too.
yeah. The, and like the way that
The
Fitz describes it
sibling
as well
sass. I
reminded me a
like it.
lot of like the way that the fool described Burrich like laying the beat down in Galen, where he's like, I turned away. I might have heard a sound that sounded like someone like open-handedly slapping someone. Not sure.
Yeah.
I might have turned around to see Regal on the floor and Verity standing over him. The, yeah.
It was so satisfying.
Unfortunately, that's the only satisfying Regal getting his comeuppance moment that we get this book. So
Yeah.
gotta savor it while it
Yeah.
lasts.
While
Regal's
we're
problem is that he's incapable of understanding that other people don't think the way he thinks. Like he's just so convinced that everybody is power hungry and everybody like has the same motivations that he does. It doesn't occur to him that like Kettricken is acting in the interest of the people because
Yeah.
he doesn't give a shit about the people and he can't imagine anyone would.
Mm-hmm. God, and like Kettrigan's speech here is like so good because there's so many
It's
ways this
really
could have
good.
gone wrong. Yeah, it's so many ways it could have gone wrong. Like she could have easily like either A, just completely failed to dispel the fervor, could have like dispelled the fervor, but then had people feeling angry towards her, angry towards the kingdom and Verity, or like feeling really down on themselves or feeling very stupid about themselves. But she does it in like this very graceful way where she's like she redirects it to the red ships and like recontextualizes, hey, like they still hold this fervor, but you're directed move it in a different direction. And for now, let's remember that these are our kinsmen and our people, and treated with that level of respect. And yeah, and it's not just like it's not just the presentation of let's do this differently. She like really frames it in a way that like is understandable to everyone, and maybe like a part of it unintentionally because she's just being candid. But yeah, it's really like again, this chapter is like Kettricken stepping the fuck up, and it's great, and I love it.
I also think it's incredible too because I feel like at the beginning of this book, people were criticizing Verity for choosing this queen who wasn't from within the Six Duchies, and they didn't think that this like foreigner queen would be good. And now they're seeing her as kind of this Six Duchies queen, not this foreign woman who just like came into
Mhm. Especially like she always says like our people, like we, and like no
yeah,
one like calls her on that. It's like the and it's kind of like just by like having the the thought to like frame it or like have those words, it's just like having that perspective automatically shows that she understands like what everyone's going through, and like makes her claim to being one of them like valid.
yeah.
Oh yeah, one thing that really struck me is Carrie's death because I completely forgot that like Carrie got forged and died. Um,
I know that was a rough one.
Yeah.
it's one of the things where like I don't think Carrie says like a single line on page in this series, but
Yeah.
because like Fitz repeatedly refers to him, it becomes this part of like Fitz's childhood, and that literally just dies. They
And
at a
Fitz
moment,
says that he like feels like part of his past had been forged because
which
of
like,
Carrie's death. But like,
but also it's I think maybe he put his pain about Carrie's death into Girl on a Dragon.
yeah.
So.
So it actually did end up being forged.
Mhm.
Girl on a Dragon can go fuck herself. She screws so much stuff up.
Oh,
Okay, well,
definitely.
okay. Is it entirely Girl on a Dragon's fault though? I don't know. I feel like it isn't. I feel like it isn't really like.
I blame her.
I think we can easily blame her, yeah.
Okay, I would blame Fitz more there, but I can totally see an argument for blaming Girl on a Dragon because also I guess like Fitz doesn't like understand or know what he's doing in that moment. Mhm. But also like I don't know
It's
that any of them
easier
do.
for me to blame Girl on a Dragon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um.
My only other note for this chapter is at the very end of it, so
I have one
Awesome.
more note about Regal, and then that's it. Um, well, it's actually more about Fitz, but the way that Fitz kind of prattles on to Regal about like all the places that Verity could be expected to be at this time of day, besides the actual place that he is right now, that Fitz knows for a fact, just reminds me so much of the way the Fool is, and like the way the Fool can just like prattle on about a bunch of random stuff and just annoy you into being like, oh, I give up.
Yeah, and like Fitz even like there's like a direct line where he's like, I had been a fool to tempt him to attack me. And I was like, aha, double confirmation.
Yes.
Yeah, and I guess my last note really is just like Shade, who had been like so like down on the idea of a queen in general, specifically Kettricken, is now like she was born to rule, born to it, and somehow now she has awakened to it. It could not have come at a better time. She may yet save us all. And it's just like he's practically like dancing around the bonfire with how happy he is, but it's also like
Yeah.
the mhm, on one hand, it's like, thank God Shade finally sees it and everyone sees it, but also like, man, this could have come earlier if you had been like a little bit a little bit more on top of your game and like trusted. Yeah.
Yeah.
Though I guess he did
He
send
doesn't
Fitz to help coach her, but also like, come on now.
Shade doesn't trust other people to like come to good conclusions on their own. Like he
Mhm.
has
Yeah.
to have his fingers in everything.
Mhm. Which obviously like becomes a huge issue later on.
Right.
I wonder if it comes from like something deep within inside himself that he won't like mention to himself, but kind of his desire to be king because he is older than Shrewd. So he probably kind of had a little fantasy like Fitz did of being part of the real royal family and like leading. And maybe that's
Yeah.
kind of why he wants to take so much control and he like justifies it as like it's the good for the country and like the good for the like Farseer family, the royal family, but like somewhere deep inside himself that he won't acknowledge is part of like I wish I was the king.
I think he doesn't want to be king explicitly, but I think that like yeah, I agree that like there's that thing of like that undercurrent of like I have a vision for the kingdom, and if things deviate from that vision, I get very mad. Where it's
I get
like
stressed.
yeah, I get
Yeah.
stressed. Where it's like the way he executes it is different from how a king would, but that's definitely still a royal impulse
Mhm.
in that. Yeah.
My last note for that chapter is Fitz and Molly finally kiss, and it says, in the moment of that kiss, somewhere near Buckkeep, a wolf lifted his voice in a joyous ululation. I'm not sure how to say that word, but that set every hound to baying and every dog to barking in a chorus that rang against the brittle night sky. I was just like, that would be so creepy if you like kiss somebody and all the dogs in the area started like howling and barking.
Yes.
I can imagine the
Like,
stables, like
oh,
Birch and Hands being like, what the fuck is going
what
on
the
now?
fuck? Yeah.
Birch is
Molly
definitely suspicious.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like in the moment of reading it, it's like, oh, that's a cute thing. But then like the logistics of it are just like, oh no, that sounds awful. That sounds miserable.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, that's a little spooky.
Mm. We have chapter 9, Guards and Bonds, which honestly should be chapter 9, A Mother's Love, and it's all about patience and just how much she has sacrificed and given up for Fitz, and it has me crying all over.
I know my frickin' heart.
It's really sad.
Oh, just even the intro where it's talking about how like Fedrin's dream of everyone having like paper or whatever, and literacy. That's also something that like we see that like that's something like shared with patients as well. Like that, and
Yeah.
so I feel like even though I was trying to like think of like how does that connect with this chapter, and I think that's kind of how it connects, where it's like patience also has like these sort of like dreams and aspirations for the kingdom in general. But yeah, I don't know. This whole thing
Mhm.
just had me like wanting to give patience a hug.
I know I
Mhm.
love her so frickin' much. And like the fact that she would subject herself to a court that like thinks of her as so weird just to like protect Fitz. Like she wants to protect Fitz just as much as Fitz wants to protect her. And I like love that so frickin' much.
Mhm.
Like they're definitely mother and son now. There's no doubt about it. And I
Yeah, they
feel
mentioned
like,
like the final wall breaking down between them.
yeah. And I think that Patience had like even when before she came, like when she because it seems like her and Chivalry had many conversations about Fitz. And I think that like she viewed Fitz as her son even then when they like her and Chivalry were talking about it. And it just took this for Fitz to realize that like, oh, she's like kind of actually my mom.
She's also just a lot more intuitive than anyone gives her credit for, including Fitz.
Definitely.
Because, like, she sees the threat in Regal And a lot of other people don't see it or underplay it or undermine it or just like won't acknowledge it at all. Like Shade, Verity, like is Shrewd's just like he learned his lesson. Verity's like, I don't trust him, but I don't think he'll be as bad as whatever. And Shade just straight up won't acknowledge anything about it. But Patience like actually cares about Fitz enough to acknowledge it and warn him against it. And like it's kind of validating, I think, for Fitz because
Yeah.
everyone else is basically gaslighting him about this like murder attempt. And Patience is like, your uncle, like be careful.
I didn't even realize or like think about that while I was reading, but that makes so much sense. And I
Mm-hmm.
love that she does that and she like warns him and she's worried about him because it does probably solidify his feelings that like Regal's not really doing anything
Right.
good.
He like laughs about it when she warns him because it's so obvious to him, but it's like no one else is acknowledging this for you. Like it's
Yeah.
and then he kind of realizes and then he gets really like emotional about it. Yeah, where he's
Yeah.
like, thank you. And then Patience kind of like, well, you're welcome.
Yeah. She doesn't want to deal with the emotion. She's like, let's just pretend like everything's fine and go back to normal. Play your pipes for me and then I'll send you home.
Mhm. Ah, yeah, that whole section where it's like laughable, almost a farce. So I could have seen it, too, this sheltered, reclusive woman speaking to me so earnestly of the realities of the world I had survived in since I was 6. Instead, I found tears stinging the corners of my eyes. I had always been mystified as to why Patience had come back to Buckkeep, to live a hermit's life in the midst of a society she obviously did not care for. Now I knew. She'd come for me, for my sake, to protect me. Birch had sheltered me, sowed shade and even Verity in his way, and of course Shute claimed me as his own. But all of them in one way or another had stood to gain by my survival. Even Birch would have seen it as a great loss of pride if someone had managed to murder me while I was under his protection. Which, no, Fitz, you're just stupid. Birch also cares for you. Um,
Yeah.
o- Only this woman, who by all rights should have abhorred me, had come to shelter me for my sake only. She was so often foolish and meddlesome and sometimes most annoying. As our eyes met, I knew she had breached the final wall I had kept between us. And I like that he acknowledges that he's the one who's been keeping this wall up. I
Yeah.
greatly
It
doubted that her
definitely wasn't
presence.
patient.
I greatly
Mm-hmm.
doubted that her presence had done anything to deter bad will toward me. If anything, her interest in me must have been a constant reminder to Regal of who had fathered me. But it was not the deed, but the intention that moved me. She had given up her quiet life, her orchards and gardens and woods, to come here, to a damp castle of stone on the sea cliffs, to a court full of folk she cared nothing about, to watch over her husband's bastard. Thank you, I said quietly, and I meant it with all my heart. And yeah, I was damn near crying reading that because goddamn.
Yeah. That got my heart. That got my heart bad.
Yeah. Also, like, it shows how out of touch Fitz is with just, like, having a mom, where he's like, she was meddlesome and annoying, but it's like, welcome to moms.
Yeah. That's how moms are.
Right.
Especially to a teenage boy, like that's exactly how moms come off.
Right.
So he's getting the full experience. He just doesn't realize it yet. I love Lacey. Like she is just my one of my favorites because the fact that she almost makes Fitz pee him his pants, like I laughed out loud at like how quickly she like got up and like stabbed him almost. Like it was the best
With
thing.
knitting needles, with knitting
I
needles.
know. She's such a
Yep.
fucking savage. I love it.
It comes out of nowhere. It's amazing.
I know. And like Fitz is so unprepared for it because he doesn't expect that Lacey could do anything like that. So he doesn't even think to like be on guard or anything.
Yep, and like
I
he's
love
like,
it.
and like he reflects, he's like, man, I have severely underestimated people, and I need to like rethink my life. Um,
Definitely.
I wish we got to see Lacey fighting at some point, but I don't think we ever do, right? Sad.
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so, but it would have been great. I hope that we get like a Lacey and Patience story. Even if it's just like a little short story of like them being friends or something. That's all I want in my life.
A Lacey and Patience novella would be amazing. Just like
Yeah.
I because there's so much depth to their characters, and like I think seeing stuff from patients, because we get a lot of patients' perspective like tangentially, but like I just want to get into her head, like from her
Yeah.
perspective. Like, what does she think?
I feel like we would get the story from Lacey though.
Yeah, fair. I guess, and also like I guess we know a little bit less about like Lacey's internal monologue. So,
I feel
uh,
like Patience would be a difficult um person to write in first person because she seems a little bit like scattered, but like deeply emotional.
Hmm.
And like from a writing perspective, I think it'd be hard to like get in her head and write it in a coherent way.
Yeah, because I think she would like jump from thing to thing to thing really, really quickly and like not give us kind of what we need to follow her thoughts and go along with it. She just
Right.
expect us to like know what she's thinking
No.
and know what's going on.
which could be an
Yep.
interesting, it could be an interesting like style though, especially if like
Yeah.
especially if like lots of the stuff that she's expecting us to know is stuff you're
Should
expected to
know if you
know
read enough.
because yeah, if you've read the series. So it's just like they like to
It'd
the
be
characters.
like it'd be like good for people like us that know her and want that like insight, but it'd be bad for
Anyone reading for the first
Anyone
time.
who like found that
readers.
as the first book,
Yes.
you're like, the fuck is this? I don't understand anything.
Right.
Mhm.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, in the midst of kind of like the aftermath of the hunt slash mourning of the last chapter, everyone's still kind of in that haze. But it made me really sad because Vixen dies in this chapter, um, and like the timing is so sad because like everyone else is doing their own mourning, so no one has time to like comfort Burrich uh, in his time of in mourning, and it's just kind of like yeah, he's just alone. Uh,
I don't think he wants to be comforted.
Yeah,
fair,
he wants to just
fair,
drink himself into oblivion.
fair. But I could honestly see the guardsmen coming and like cutting off a hair or just like bringing him some food from the
Or
kitchen or
like
something.
saying a kind word and being like,
Like
she was the
says.
best hunting dog, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
Hmm. Like they wouldn't stay
Yeah,
in
that
like
one's rough.
they wouldn't stay and pat his back, but they would definitely be able to come and give him comfort in their own way.
Well, and it's this scene that solidifies that they were whip bonded. Like, there's no doubt in my mind after he like built a funeral pyre for her that they were like more than just dog and master.
Mhm.
Yes. Agreed. I don't remember like what section this is from. Um, but this chapter has like one of my favorite lines from these books as a whole where he Fitz is talking about like how people can go on after like the facing the worst thing that they could imagine. And it says to finally confront the worst there is, to look it squarely in the face and say, I know you. You have hurt me almost to death, but still I live, and I will go on living. I just think that's really poignant. I really like that line.
Yeah, that's a strong one.
But I have no idea. I don't remember at all what it was in reference to, so that makes it kind of loose. It's like,
I know, I can't remember either.
Yeah. I always feel like that makes it I like having it out of context because that makes it so much more like widely applicable rather than being something
yes,
so,
that's
yeah.
true.
The
Yeah.
I do remember, I think, what it's from, but do you want me to share it or should I keep it to myself?
no, I guess
Share.
share it, I'm curious.
I think that it's like everyone's kind of taking it easy and like feeling a little bit of relief and a weight off of their shoulders after what happened yesterday. And like
Oh, with
having
the
all
full.
the like funeral pyres be burned and like having the bodies all washed and like going through that kind of ritual. And then the
Mhm.
day after, it's kind of like they feel better because that was the worst of it for them. They had like faced down killing their own people and they had turned it into something better because of Kettricken.
Yep. I think you're right.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Okay. And I guess the last section of the chapter and the last I guess, section for this episode as a whole. Um, Fitz, in the aftermath of the feast, realizes, oh man, I didn't take Nighteyes anything after the feast, so goes to take some food to Nighteyes, and they end up playing and also having sort of another deep conversation about their roles in each other's lives.
I love when they play.
I know,
like,
it's so
those little
freaking cute.
moments are my favorite moments of this book. Where they just get to play. And there's somehow, inexplicably, Robin Hobb captures, like, the joyous energy of a puppy. Like,
Yeah,
through dialogue, which is incredible.
yeah.
Which, to be fair, it's just like, got you, got you, got you.
Fun.
So freaking cute.
Ah, I want a puppy so bad.
One thing that happens before that, but I think might include Nighteyes, is when Fitz is stopping Kettricken from going down to visit Verity where the ships are being made. And she kind of talks about how lonely she is and how she's like, don't you know how it feels to like, you just want to spend your time in the presence of someone who like may or may not want the same thing. And then we get a little whisper of like, I do. And it's in italics. So do you think that Nighteyes is saying that? And like he's acknowledging that like he feels just as lonely as she does and he wants to be in the presence of Fitz and he just wants to hang out with his boy and like he thinks that Fitz doesn't want to be with him? Or
I
do you
think
think
so,
that that's like a Fitz thought?
definitely feels like a Nighteyes thought to me, especially given Nighteyes just hanging out on the sidelines, being like, haha, I'm here.
He was there
Yeah.
too, yeah. Shortly after, she's like, there's a wolf watching us.
Mm-hmm.
Fitz is
Fitz
like,
is like,
I
no,
don't
there's
see
not.
anything.
Yeah. Fitz really be like, I do not see it.
And then he angry scowls at the woods. He's like, I don't see anything.
And then
Foreshadowing later
Kettrican's
when
like,
he's
wow,
like,
why are you so angry at me?
Yeah.
Okay, also wait, this is a note
I
that I meant
felt
to say like in the previous chapters, but oh my god, like Verity and Kettricken need to get like a goddamn marriage counseling and stop like dumping their shit on Fitz. It's like so funny how like they both
they
have like
both
zero,
do it.
they have a
it's so
zero
awkward.
filter. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's so awkward. Like,
Kettricken
why
is
would
like,
you
oh,
tell a teenage boy any of that stuff?
I just wish he would bone me, and it's like I don't need to hear this. Like keep it
Yeah.
like go and tell him that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awkward. Poor Fitz. He goes
Yeah.
through a lot.
Yeah.
The worst of it, having to listen to Kettricken and Verity. Oh, the
Yes.
humanity. But yeah, I guess I really like this like section with Nighteyes and Fitz, where like Fitz is like, I have to set you free to live the life you're meant to live. I must live the life I was meant for. This is it, brother. We are as we are. How can you claim to know what life I was meant to lead, let alone threaten to force me into it? You cannot even accept what you are meant to be. You deny it even as you are it. All your quibbling is nonsense. As well forbid your nose to snuff or your ears to hear. We are as we do, brother. And yeah, I love that idea of like, because there's so much about like fate and like growing into who you are, and like I love Night Eyes just like cutting through all that and just being like what's the point of like worrying about like what you were meant to be or what you will be? You are just what you are right now, and that's enough.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, another thing of like Night Eyes' mentality really struck me. He says, wrong. If you can do it, how can it be wrong? Talking to like Fitz about having the wit. And that's the exact mentality that Fitz had in the last book about the wit. Like, how can it be wrong if I can do it and it feels so natural? And now he's trying to like take on Burrich's ideas that, oh, this is wrong. But like, it's not. And
It's
Night
not.
Eyes knows that.
Mhm.
I wonder if there are any people who read these books with like Birch's perspective. I hope not.
I hope not.
But
I feel like being so closely like intertwined with Fitz's
narrative.
thoughts, there's no way that you could.
Right.
Okay. do we have any more thoughts, notes for this chapter?
I do not.
I think that was
No.
it for me.
Okay, cool. And with that, that's today's episode. So thanks everyone for watching. Um, oh, I also this is an important note. I wanted to mention this at the start, but then I'm going to mention it now. Thanks so much to forgive me if I'm pronouncing it Krenda Blobit. Is that how you pronounce it? For
Oh,
for
Kendra?
the
Yeah.
Kendra Blobit. Kendra. Okay,
Kendra.
sorry. I butchered that. So sorry. But like we always have the link in the
Well,
description.
thanks
But they
for
made us a new wolf Nighteyes themed icon
logo.
art, which I think we were originally planning to just have like the one dragon logo, which is why it's a dragon for the first book. But then I was just like, this would be a cool thing, and then it was just like, yeah, let's see it. And like at the time of the first episode, when we recorded that, we didn't have the art, but I saw it, and but like it came like while we were doing editing for that. And it's like, oh, so good. So thanks so much for that.
Yeah, her
Yeah, it's perfect.
her Instagram, if anyone wants to follow her, she's an artist that I've been friends with for years, and she's amazing. But her name is Kendra Boblet, but her Instagram is Krendra_Blobet. So so that's why you
I like that.
pronounced it the way her Instagram is. But yeah, she's tagged in like our Instagram posts.
And she's linked
I
in the
don't
description of all of our videos and stuff, and the Spotify
yeah.
stuff. So yeah,
So she's the best. I love
yeah.
her.
So thank you so much for that.
Yeah,
Other
it's amazing.
other than that, our we are probably going to be delaying episode releases to uh, Tuesday 12 CST instead of Mondays, because there's a little bit of quibble because some of the files are on my end, and I'm currently in India with kind of a horrible upload speed internet. Like the last episode, for reference, took almost 24 hours to upload. So there's going to be a little bit of a delay there. But other than that, and that should only last till end of this month. Other than that, I don't think there's any
So
announcements or
maybe
changes.
till the end of this book?
Yeah, so probably
Just
till
Yeah,
end of
this
Royal
book?
Assassin, because
just to keep it consistent. Like it's probably only going to take us about a month to get through this anyway. So
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, let's just say through the end of Royal Assassin. But yeah, so thanks everyone for watching or listening, and until next week, see ya.
bye.
Bye.